Well, good evening, Forest Mill. It is good to be with you once again. I hope that you are doing well and having a good week. We've certainly been blessed with some beautiful sunshine today. Some beautiful sunshine today. I hope that you got to enjoy that some, get out a little bit, and just enjoy the day. It has been a long time since we've really started this study. This Wednesday evening study through the Psalms, and I've really enjoyed it. I hope it has been an encouragement to you. I know it has been good for me just to have a focus on these Wednesday nights and sort of kind of bring me back around, as we tend to wander off course and we aren't intentional about it. So I hope it has been a good blessing for you too. We come tonight to a beautiful psalm. Psalm 118. Now, it is sandwiched between Psalm 117 and 119, the shortest chapter in the Bible being Psalm 117, the longest chapter being Psalm 119. It also has the distinction of being the last of what's called the Egyptian Hallel Psalms, that were this group of Psalms that we've been going through for the last few weeks, 18 back to, I believe it was 12, yeah, through Psalm 12 that were used in association with their festivals, and so we're really kind of getting into a psalm that has a real significance, and we don't know exactly who wrote Psalm 118, but based on some of the context within the passage itself, we believe that it was probably written around the rededication of the temple in around 444? Yeah, it was in 444 that the temple was rededicated, and so we believe this was a part of that, because it mentions the gates, and it mentions the building, and it expresses the joy that the people had at this tremendous accomplishment to sort of get back on the road to being a nation once again. It was a long process. It started, they laid the foundations, we know, back in about 320. Anyway, they laid the foundations. It was 16 years later before they were able to get back on the project. They were derailed by some of their enemies who were living within the city and without just outside the city, and sort of prevented them. They didn't want to see Israel reestablished, and so they became real detractors in the process. So it took them, after they laid the foundations, took them another 16 years to pick up and resume the project, and then took another 5 years of building on the project before it was complete. This would have been around in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. Nehemiah came around in about 444 BC, and Nehemiah had a lot to say about the building of the walls and the rebuilding of houses, and the way that people were being treated within the city, especially the poor and the downtrodden were being treated within the city at that time. So this was a big and monumental event. The way it's written indicates to us that it was probably meant for a group worship, a large gathering of people. The whole nation is mentioned. It was only 50,000 people who came back from Babylonian exile, about 50,000 people who came back. So there was certainly nothing compared to their former days of glory and under the kingship of David and Solomon, and they didn't have the military power. They didn't have the access to all of the land. They certainly were much poorer in all phases of life. But to come back 50,000, and with just 50,000 to rebuild to the point that now you've established the temple again would have felt like a monumental victory. And this psalm seems to celebrate that victory. It's often at these times in life, and maybe you've experienced a big victory in your life, where it's really tempting to feel good about ourselves because we've done something good. And certainly there's nothing wrong with taking pride in accomplishing something, but that's not who gets the credit in this psalm. The name of the Lord is just throughout this psalm, over and over, he is credited. And I think it's a good reminder to us, even as we, as a congregation and community, and even as a state and a nation are heading towards a time of victory. We believe that, there's coming a day when we're not going to have to wear masks and not going to have to worry about social distancing, and we're going to be able to eat together again and sit down together again and give hugs and handshakes without worrying about it and thinking twice about it. We believe that we're headed towards that day. And if that day arrives, or when that day arrives, we will certainly want to celebrate. But we should be careful in our celebration to not take the credit for ourselves or dependent on any politician or political agenda, because the victories in this life, at least the ones that are worth celebrating, always belong to the Lord. So let's begin with that, bearing that in mind. Look at how this psalmist starts out. Verse 1, Psalm 118, verse 1. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Let Israel say, his love endures forever. Let the house of Aaron say, his love endures forever. Let those who fear the Lord say, his love endures forever. Now, based on Israel's history, it would have been really tempting, and certainly we know it was the case based on the writings of the prophets in exile, that people did not feel like the Lord's love endured forever. They felt like the Lord had turned his back on them, and that he had not loved them, and that he had let them down. But now here they are all these years later, and they're looking back even at those terrible experiences, maybe the experiences of their parents or grandparents, but their ancestors, what they'd come through, and coming back to live within a city that was by no means ideal, which they've had to work for every square inch that they wanted to reclaim. It would be easy to think that God had forgotten you. But that's the reminder within this psalm. Looking back, they can see that indeed the Lord has loved them all along. The house of, let Israel say, of course, that's the whole nation. And then the house of Aaron would specifically be those men who would be serving within the temple, the priests and the functionaries within the temple. And what a blessing it would have been for them to have their intended role sort of come into being on this day, that they could go back to being who God had called them to be. And then let those who fear the Lord say his love endured forever. And this would have been even broader than just the house of Israel. Certainly there were Gentiles and those who knew the Lord and loved the Lord and feared the Lord. And the call of this psalm is for all of them to proclaim that the love of the Lord endures forever. Now, let's go through their crisis. Look at verse 5. When hard pressed, I cried to the Lord. He brought me into a spacious place. The Lord is with me. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? By the way, notice as we're going through here these verses that every verse mentions the name of the Lord. Every single verse. Verse 6 again, the Lord is with me, I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? The Lord is with me, he is my helper. I look in triumph on my enemies. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in humans. It's better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in princes. All the nations surrounded me, but in the name of the Lord I cut them down. They surrounded me on every side, but in the name of the Lord I cut them down. They swarmed around me like bees, but they were consumed as quickly as burning thorns. In the name of the Lord I cut them down. I was pushed back and about to fall, but the Lord helped me. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. If we begin by giving thanks to the Lord for his enduring love, this is a reminder to trust in the Lord in every circumstance. Every circumstance. The Lord can be trusted in every crisis that we face. And it doesn't always feel like that, especially when it's a crisis of our own making. When we've done something silly or stupid or foolish or selfish or greedy or sinful, or when we have created the crisis ourselves, we may feel like it's on us to dig ourselves out. At least that's my tendency. I've got to clean up my own messes, right? I don't want to be that helpless. But the truth is, it is even in the crisis that we create that we stand in need of the Lord. And he is the only one who can help see us through. It's interesting that verses 8 and 9 are the central verses of the Bible. Of course, dividing up the Bible into verses didn't come until much, much, much later, after the writing of the Psalms. And there's nothing inspired about the way the monks had eventually divided up Scripture into verses. But it's just an interesting note. It's a powerful thought that we should take our refuge in the Lord, not in any human beings, not even in princes, right? Not even those who are powerful and in authority, and they have, whether it's money or political power or fame or whatever it is that leads other people to trust in them. That's not where our trust lies. And that's one of the most difficult things about living in our society in today's day and age is that we have forces on both sides of the political spectrum and other sides of the political spectrum that are out there who vaunt their system or their political party or their politician, whatever, and that's the solution. That's where we need to turn for trust. All the problems we have now, it's the fault of this person, or it's the fault of that person, or this political party, or the fault of that political party. And we should go to the other side, right? Or we should see all the good that one politician or a political party does. We should trust in them. But the psalmist reminds us it's better to take refuge in the Lord. The Lord is the only one who will never deceive us. The Lord is never putting on a show for political power. The Lord is never trying to win us over with polite words. The Lord is the only one who always has our best interests at heart. That's why we take our refuge in him. So the foundation of the temple was laid in, 536 BC. And it wasn't, the temple project wasn't resumed until 520 and then completed in 525. That's where my notes were on that particular project. And so here they come to this big day, and when they're celebrating this accomplishment, they're looking back at what they've come through, what they've endured. Whether it was the escape from exile or coming back to a ruined city or living surrounded by enemies, as they reference multiple times here. There was no way they had the military might to cut down these enemies, right? They weren't numerous enough. They didn't have the weapons or the defensive walls. They didn't have any advantage over the enemies that surrounded them. And yet now they're looking back and saying, these enemies have all been cut down. They've all been set aside. They're no longer standing in opposition to us. That's not something that I could have done on my own. And the I and me here, it makes it sound like it's a a personal thing, but it's written from the vantage point of Israel. So Israel has cut them down. Israel was pushed back and about to fall, but the Lord helped me, helped Israel. In particular, the Lord is my strength and my defense. Because we didn't have real defense. We didn't have, the right amount of spears or the right walls built. We didn't have defensive gates at these walls. We didn't have strong cities outlying to protect us. We didn't have any advantage. We didn't have any strength. We didn't have any defense. The Lord is my strength and my defense. And he has become my salvation. All right, continuing on now at verse 15, excuse me. Shouts of joy and victory resound in the tents of the righteous. The Lord's right hand has done many mighty things. The Lord's right hand is lifted high. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. I will not die, but live, and will proclaim what the Lord has done. The Lord has chastened me severely, but he has not given me over to death. Open for me the gates of the righteous. I will enter and give thanks to the Lord. This is the gate of the Lord, through which the righteous may enter. I will give you thanks, for you answered me. You have become my salvation. This is a glorifying of the Lord after every victory, right? When the wall was dedicated, the joyful shouts of the people, Nehemiah says they were heard far off, and you can imagine thousands and thousands of people celebrating this huge joint accomplishment that they've been working on together for years. This was the accomplishment, right? The tents of the righteous are the homes of the people of Israel, as well as their temporary dwelling during the dwellings during the Feast of the Tabernacles. So the people, even when you're living in a tent, the people were careful to give the Lord all the glory for restoring them, for becoming their salvation. It is granting the Lord glory, the glory that he's due, the glory that he has earned and he has wrought with his own hand. There's a lot of references here to the Lord's right hand. The right hand is the hand of action and power. Right, most of us are right-handed. I can throw better with my right. I write with my right. Everything of significance that I do is generally done with my right hand. If I need precision, if I need strength, it all comes from my right hand. I don't have to use my feet or my left hand. Heaven help us if you have to read my writing with my left hand, or if I have to throw a ball to you with my left hand, or I have to swing a hammer with my left hand. That would just be disastrous. Right? The right hand of the Lord is his strength, it is power, it is his power, and it is his hand of action. And the Lord's right hand has done mighty things. It is the Lord who has accomplished this this fulfillment of the covenant and granting them the ability to rebuild the temple. The Lord even made that possible, right? We couldn't hold up our end of the bargain at all, and the Lord still rescued us and brought us back here and empowered us. Gave us the ability to live into the covenant that he had established. So it's really powerful, glorifying of the Lord here. Finally, look at verses 22 through 29. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Now, you probably recognize that verse from the New Testament. We're going to come back to that. Just remember it. The Lord has done this, and it is marvelous in our eyes. The Lord has done it this very day. Let us rejoice today and be glad. Lord, save us. Lord, grant us success. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. For from the house of the Lord we bless you. The Lord is God, and he has made his light shine on us. With boughs in hand, join in the festal procession up to the horns of the altar. You are my God, and I will praise you. You are my God, and I will exalt you. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. This last section, we might say, is seeing the Lord in every experience. Under Zerubbabel, who was their governor, when they came back, they had to have some sort of, they didn't have a king, they didn't have anything. So when they come back, Zerubbabel is their governor. He was granted when they were released from Babylon. He was sort of empowered to be the leader of the people when they came back, and under him and under Ezra, the prophet Ezra, the Jewish people had been rebuilding the temple, and under Nehemiah they'd been rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem and restoring the gates. And during all of this activity, evidently at some point they'd found a really large stone, but it didn't look very good, and so they'd set it aside. And it wasn't until later that they realized that in fact it was the cornerstone of the temple. At least that's what seems to be what is being said here, that the stone that at first the builders who were in charge of rebuilding the temple, they first saw this stone, they were like, no, this stone is no good to us. And then later they come to realize that it was in fact the cornerstone. Now we understand it as a metaphor that something we view as ugly or broken or insignificant actually becomes something great, right? Christ, who was nothing to look at, didn't do anything of significance outside of a 30 square mile area, was little known in the outside world. I mean, there was nothing about him to draw people to him. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't powerful by human standards. And yet, though he never led the people to a military victory, though he didn't overthrow the Roman government who was dominating Palestine at the time, Jesus never did any of that. And yet he became the most important human being in all of history. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. That metaphor, we believe, was based on a reality that took place around this time in the rebuilding, whether it was rebuilding of the temple or the rebuilding of the city walls. And they understood it as a metaphor for themselves. That, in fact, what everybody else would have discarded and said was insignificant or unimportant or broken or flawed in some way, that in fact God was doing something great with them. They may not have been glamorous, they may not have been one of the show stones, but they could be a cornerstone, and that God could build upon them. Praise God for his ability to work with broken things. And tonight, that's my prayer for you, my prayer for us, is that we may recognize, we know our flaws, and you're intimately familiar with your failures and your weaknesses and your trials and your temptations. You know those things. And I am quick to discount my abilities or my worthiness because I know how broken I am. And yet God uses broken people all the time. The stone the builders rejected has become something upon which God can build. May you and I be stones upon which God can build. Trust in the Lord in all circumstances. Give him the glory for your victories and glorify him. May God bless you in the study of his word this evening.